Good morning and welcome to the June EP&R Lunch and Learn on the Virginia Department of Health, Eastern Virginia Healthcare Coalition Full Moon Cruise Ship Tabletop Exercise. Today's presenter is John Cook, Eastern Region Emergency Coordinator, Office of Emergency Preparedness. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Don. Um, I'll start this out kind of with the origin story. Almost 2.5 years ago now, our the leadership at the CDC's quarantine station, now known as the Port Health Station in Dulles, changed, and the new director came down to Eastern Virginia for a visit, just a familiarization session, if you will. And we sat around, strategizing about a lot of different things with some of our partners in the room, because the CDC Port Health Station at Dulles also covers the eastern part of Virginia, particularly the Port of Virginia. The conversation came around to asking, Commander McGregor, really what kept her up at night. And she said, a cruise ship calling on the port of Norfolk full of sick people or with some sort of outbreak. And that started a conversation about, well, maybe we should exercise that. Fast forward to about to February 3rd and 4th of 2025, we actually put that exercise into motion. So as I said, the concept is, what will we do if a cruise ship with 500 to 1,000 sick people, or people who are exposed to a serious infectious disease came to the Port of Norfolk. That became reality with Carnival making Norfolk a routine stop for their vessel, the Carnival Sunshine, which leaves leaves Norfolk weekly, 3,500 passengers and 1,200 free. Usually they call they return home on Saturday and debark, and then the new 3,500 people, 3,500 visitors or passengers change over on Sunday, and they go for a week down to the Bahamas, et cetera, et cetera. So, as I said, we started with this concept of kind of trying to do this as a homegrown sort of thing in the Eastern region, planning the exercise, and we made good progress. But at some point, the Norfolk Emergency Manager turned us on to what's called the FEMA National Exercise Program. And we applied for assistance through them and were awarded that assistance. So essentially, we had master exercise practitioners who were contractors and FEMA employees who sort of came in and took over and assisted us, not only with writing the scenario, but putting together all of the documentation, formatting all of the objectives, and just kind of keeping us on track. One of the greatest deliverables that they provided to us were kind of simulated news briefings that we used to frame the scenario in the room. So you can kind of, you see a picture there of what the rooms look like. We had about 100 people for both of 2 days. And obviously we had a great big screen and could play, these breaking news clips as the scenario changed. We were very careful because we wanted people in the room and to be able to discuss. Anyone from Eastern Virginia or really even Richmond down, we strongly suggested / compelled that they be in person. We didn't offer a virtual option to anybody but the cruise ship line themselves, who were in Miami and just could not justify 2 days of travel to Norfolk for this. So we did allow them a virtual option, and that worked out very well. And finally, kind of one of our key players, like I said, the Port Health Station at Dulles were really where this concept came about. But unfortunately, you realize that the 3rd and 4th of February was right in a time frame where the new administration was taking over, and they were making some pretty drastic changes with CDC. And so the CDC Port Health folks were not able to participate. We hoped to have them down, and we 2 weeks before, they basically sent us the message that their travel was restricted and that they could not make appearances. So that kind of forced us to, not really fall back and punt, but to rely on our own resources locally to take as much of this, take much of the role of the scenario as they possibly could. So here are the participants. I'm not going to read each one of them to you, but we certainly had a great commitment from Carnival, and they had probably a half a dozen people in their health station, their health EOC in Miami, who we had an open line with, and basically they were really great partners, and we learned a lot about their capabilities and what they do and how they interact with the ship, and how we would interact with them. Obviously, the city of Norfolk was a huge player in this: emergency management, fire, rescue, police, the healthcare coalition. They were great partners. We partnered with them early for a lot of different reasons, but one, because we wanted to test the ability to surge this number of patients into the healthcare facilities in Eastern Virginia, and see how that would work and how long it would take and what the mechanics of that were. And we accomplished that. Obviously, the cruise terminal themselves. So Norfolk has down by the Battleship Wisconsin a cruise ship terminal. We initially met there and had planned to actually conduct the tabletop exercise there. But again, being flexible, the cruise lines actually stepped up their time frame for starting cruises. And so by the time that we wanted to have our exercise, they were actually moving in screening materials, X-ray machines, setting up the process of actually, screening passengers and luggage and such like that. So we found a great space a couple of blocks away at a local library with a fantastic view and just a lovely place to be. Obviously, the local hospitals played. The Coast Guard played a huge role, as when the vessel is out at sea, the captain of the port is ultimately in charge of making decisions. Certainly not in a vacuum, but it's her game to, or her show to run. We had lots of local epidemiologists, under the auspices of mutual aid agreements. Norfolk Health Department could not handle something like this alone. They would bring in subject matter experts or other epidemiologists from the localities. We had CBP, we had, Virginia Department of Emergency Management, a myriad. Like I said, there were 100 people each day approximately in the. So here's the overview or the timeline of events. As I said, we used real time, so the date. The cruise ship would have left on January 26th. You see the numbers there. 300 of these folks were supposed to have been wellness guardians, which were something that the National Exercise Program kind of made up, including 5-year-old Jace Owens, who had a runny nose and a cough. Fast forward to day 5 of the cruise, Jace gets worse, and other families are beginning to experience the symptoms. And again, like I said, there are videos that sort of do this updating. It's not Hollywood, but it certainly does set the stage for us. So I'm sure that you all can see that where this is going. By day 7, the physician suspects measles and notifies the Health Operations Center for Carnival, and then the sort of the game is on. So how do we react to a highly communicable disease amongst a primarily unvaccinated population, and what are our responses? Like I said, this was a 2-day exercise. So the morning of the first day was emergency coordination. How do we go about forming this unified command? What does it look like? Who needs to be there? The Coast Guard is obviously in charge, but they don't have very robust medical at all. Not like the Navy, where they have foremen. Coast Guard, they're not accustomed to dealing with medical issues. So we worked through a lot of those problems, a lot of creative problem solving as to, do we bring the ship into port? Do we keep the ship off the coast, et cetera, et cetera. And then the afternoon of day 1 was more about situational awareness and public information and warning. So how do we get what information back and forth from the vessel? How can we physically, or communicate protected health information, patient information, and then what is the message that is going out, not only to the general public, but to the families and friends of people aboard the ship, and the 3,500 people who are showing up in Norfolk expecting to get on a cruise next week. So there are a lot of audiences, and we did some really creative messaging and just walking through those steps and identifying how we would do that communication. So we broke, everybody went back home for their evening and came back the next morning, talking more about the surge capacity piece. How would our regional healthcare coordinating center and the transfer centers be distributing this many patients, both in a patient tracking manner, and physically, how would we move this number of people who needed essentially isolation? How would EMS interact? What resources were available? And how are we keeping track of it? Broke for lunch, and then the final session on the afternoon of the second day was all about the public health surveillance and EPI investigations. So a lot of our partners, I won't say dropped off, but like for example, the Coast Guard don't have a role in that. This scenario, be it hypothetical, would have wrapped up for them by now. And it transitions to a public health surveillance and EPI investigation. So my counterpart, Anna Colon, sort of led that discussion amongst her team of epidemiologists from the Eastern region, plus all of the people from central office about, what is this actually going to look like? How are we going to follow up with this number of people? How do we interact with, 500 or 1,000 people who may be from any part of the United States? Lots of really great conversations were had there. So I didn't change this slide. These are the preliminary conclusions. but the after action report has been formalized now. Nothing really drastic has changed. We got great kudos for the Carnival Health Operations Center. As I said earlier, they have an operations center in Miami with their physicians and nursing staff that communicate directly with the vessel and then can communicate back to public health and hospitals. And that was a huge strength. Keep in mind that this is a 24-hour operation. It scales down like anything, but you know, the Carnival has hundreds of, well, tens of vessels in the water at any given time all over the world. So this is something that is not completely unheard of. We also got kudos from for the VDH incident management teams and how we use our folks in a command structure. Believe it or not, communication was identified as a strength, which is very unusual. Most exercises, that's the #1 weakness. But we were able to produce consistent and accurate public information. PHI was kept confidential but shared when appropriate. So we didn't run into any problems like we thought we might with people saying, "Oh, we can't share that with you because of HIPAA or whatever." We were able to keep that on great, keep that where it wanted to be. VDH and the hospitals are well acquainted with our highly infectious disease plans, which is true. We do tabletop exercises like this frequently and keep that plan kind of close to ready to being used. The disembarkation procedures, like I said, Carnival is very used to this, and they can quickly add steps that isolate or individuals who may not need to interact with others. They have a great system, and they can modify it as needed. And then the relationships between the hospitals and the EPIs and the way that they collaborate on a day-to-day basis easily scaled up for this evolution. Areas for improvement. We identified that there were challenges with roles and responsibilities within unified command. So said very simply, just because every entity is not part of unified command doesn't mean they don't have a seat at the table. But sometimes when everybody wants to be part of that unified command, it loses focus. And that's an easy lesson to take. We identified that we don't have great triggers for our joint information center. And we also identified that in a scenario like this, it's really difficult to identify who is the lead in the JIP because it probably is going to change. Our patient tracking system was found to be an area for improvement. Down here, we are still essentially on paper as far as mass casualty management and the distribution of patients. It is not an automated system, and it does not interface with the Office of Epidemiology and all of their systems. Our Family Reception Center and Family Assistance Center plans need refinement. The Regional Hospital Healthcare Coordinating Center, RHCC, was not used to its capacity, primarily because a lot of the partners, particularly the port, the Coast Guard, CBP, the cruise lines, don't completely understand that role. So we made progress on that, but that was identified as an area for improvement. And finally, challenges accessing passenger and crew immunization records. That was a little bit of a surprise to us, but Carnival was not able to produce us, a single source of vaccination records, primarily for crew, but certainly not for passengers. That's just not something that they routinely collect. So that through slowed us down, slowed the epidemiologists down. Some of the feedback that came, you see the chart on the left-hand side, was a response to the question, this helped my organization identify actionable changes. So there is a matrix of changes that need to be made, and we're making progress on that. But the vast majority agreed that there were some identifiable changes, actionable changes that came out of this. And then the right people were at the table. You see that the graph on the left shows the majority either agreed or strongly agreed that we had the right people in the room. And to wrap up, I rarely say that I am proud of something, but I am truly proud of this because I think it shows that we really made progress. At least, well, I'm going to say at least every person that responded to the feedback survey said that they were better prepared. So it's hard to get 100% of anything, but every person said that they were better prepared after this exercise. So we are working now to determine what may be our follow-on, if there's another more operational evolution of this exercise. That's probably years out if it comes to pass. I'm not sure that that will be the case, but I will certainly stay tuned. And if there are suggestions on how best to do that, we'd love to hear them. That kind of gets me to the end of my slide deck. I'm happy to answer any questions that there are about the exercise. I cannot express enough what great partners Carnival Cruise Lines were and are, and I cannot praise enough the National Exercise Division, who really did a lot of the say heavy lifting for this exercise. A lot of the paperwork, a lot of the formalities, a lot of the formatting was all done by them, allowing us to kind of free up and do the relationship building. So with that, Donald, are there any questions?
I don't see any in the chat, and I don't hear any from Susan or Sydney,
Okay.
our two participants. And if there are no questions or comments, this concludes the June EP&R Lunch and Learn, and I would like to thank John again for taking time out of his busy schedule to share this wonderful presentation. And that concludes this EP&R Lunch and Learn. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day and rest of the week.
You're welcome, you all. Appreciate you all coming. Take care.